Hi everyone, Jim Moyna with Moyna Bass Fishes. I've made the long trip from the St. Lawrence River back here to Reamer, Minnesota with the lovely Lake Washburn in the background. It's 1,800 acre lake in north central Minnesota. So you get a lot of time to think. You think about where you went wrong, what you should have done different. There's just a lot of thinking time on a drive like that, especially when you drive through Canada for a good part of the trip and in Upper Peninsula, Michigan. Because when you're in Canada, at least for me, my cell phone does not have international calling and texting or websiting or onlining. So you pretty much are dead silent on your phone. Your phone's useless. And then when you get to the Upper Peninsula, Michigan, it's almost the same thing because cell reception is like incredibly spotty. So it's just, you might as well just not even try to have conversations and try to stream music and that. It's like, because it's just always being interrupted with bad cell service. So you get a lot of time to think. And obviously, I can't believe I'm sitting here in Minnesota and that tournament's still going on where I just came from. I mean, tomorrow's the championship round. Today was a knockout round. I tried to listen to some of it as I was driving today, but like I said, driving through the Upper Peninsula, Michigan, and through northern Wisconsin, it just I just couldn't hold the signal, and then it was just a headache trying to regain it. And meanwhile, you're trying to drive, so just that's eventually you're just like, screw it, I'll just drive. But anyways, it's I think part of the problem was I wasn't around enough fish. That's a big part of the problem. Why wasn't I around enough fish? I don't really know. It sounds like there was shallow patterns. Guys in the knockout round, there are guys fishing shallow. A lot of them fishing deep. The guys that were fishing deep, I mean, they just drive to the fish and immediately get on them, it seemed like. Or they won't get on them right away, but then they move around a little bit on the structure or whatever they're fishing, and then all of a sudden they get on them. So, and that was never the case where I was fishing. It's like, I could never get on a lot of fish at once. The first day on a shallow spot, there was quite a few fish there, and that was they were at 17.5 pounds, and really had if I could have got that really big one to bite, I mean, I would have had a 20-pound bag. Because I had a fish that was easily could have been called, and that fish I saw was like double the 3-pounder it was chasing. The 3-pounder being the 3-pounder that I ended up weighing in that was on my hook. And that fish was like double the size. So that could have made a big difference on day one, but when it came down to it, I just wasn't around enough fish. I didn't have places where I could just roll up on and there's like 4-pounders. Some of the places I rolled up on, there would be 2-pounders and 2-pounders and 2-pounders. Then the second day I was out there, it was just tough fishing everywhere I went. It was just few scattered fish here and there. I did have one almost 5 pounds in my bag on my second day, so I had one of the right ones, but I just was not catching enough fish to call out. I did lose one, a 3.5 pounder. Don't understand what happened in this case. It's embarrassing to admit, but the knot on my Dropshot broke with 8-pound test, and that will happen sometimes, especially if you drop down to 6 or less, and especially if you're using a 1/2-ounce sinker. Now, the knots don't tend to break on a Dropshot when you're using a lighter sinker or heavier line, but when you get up to a 1/2-ounce sinker, and it's always when that fish jumps and shakes his head, that's when it breaks. So you get a big fish jumping, and he's shaking his head, and he gets that half mountain sinker just snapping back and forth while he's in midair. And I think it's just that fish can just generate enough force with that sinker to cause that knot to break right at the hook, and then you lose everything. So, and which is another reason why I'm now tying longer drop shot leaders, meaning from the hook to the sinker, I'm increasing that distance, just for the very reason of reducing the chances of something like that happening, and reducing the number of times I actually lose the sinker. Because when you have a really short leader, it seems like that fish can get a lot of leverage on that sinker and pop that knot or just pop the sinker off just more often with higher frequency of occurrences than if you use a longer leader. And I kind of learned this at Sandusky Bay a couple years ago. Some of the other pros that were in the finals, I did make the finals in that tournament in Sandusky, and some of the pros that were doing extremely well, I mean, their drop shot lengths were like 3 times or 4 times the length of the one I was using. You know, I was using a really short one, and it turns out it was unnecessary, and I was losing tons of sinkers, knots were breaking. Meanwhile, you know, I had a conversation with one of the other fellas, and was using the long leader, and they're telling me, yeah, I'm not losing sinkers, I'm not breaking knots. And so I've been going with a longer leader since on my smallmouths, and I can say I've lost fewer sinkers in the process, broken fewer knots. So with that said, yeah, so I lost one fish that second day I was out there. One decent one was like a 3.5 pounder. He jumped about 15 feet out from the boat. But even then, you know, I still would have had a small fish in my bag that last day just because I was not catching enough fish. Although I did get on a pot of like 13, 14 inches, a good pot of them. It's like I could see them down there, and I mean, I kept dropping down on them and hoping one of them was going to be a good fish, but they all kept coming up 13, 14 inches. And so that was kind of fun. It was fun, but it was frustrating at the same time, because every time every time you realize it's a 14 incher, well, that's just kind of a, you know, deflating psychologically, because, you know, you just wasted your time fishing for this 14 incher, and now you're wasting your time trying to unhook it, you're wasting your time, you know, putting on a new bait if needed, and repositioning the boat, so on and so forth. So yeah, so a lot of the fish I caught were on drop shot in the tournament. The baits I was using was the Billy Rub's Hot Shot and the Berkeley Flatworm. It's kind of alternating between those two. The other bait that worked, the one that caught the fish that was nearly 5 pounds, that was a Nico rigged curly tail worm. That was kind of cool, and it was about midday of the second day, so I really was jacked at that time, because I'm like, okay, I got one really good one, it's what I need. And now I got half a day, or a little less than half a day, slightly less than half a day, to just get 4 more of these, or at least 3 more of these, because of my other fish, I had like a 3.25, 3.5 pounder in the live well with that new one close to 5 pounds. So really, I'm like, I just need 3 more really good ones, and I can make this cut then. But wasn't meant to be. But anyways, the story on that one is, I was fishing a lot of shallow water, in grass, and I was fishing grass at the time, and I'm constantly looking out with the Lowrance Active Target, looking forward out in front of the boat, and trying to spot fish, and trying to spot weed clumps to throw at and so forth. So I saw this weed clump and this weed clump had like a heavier mark coming right out of the middle of it, which tells me that's either going to be like a really thick stem of weed of some kind, like a thick cabbage, one thick cabbage stalk perhaps, or it could have been a fish. So, you know, obviously you got to throw over there and see what happens. So throw the Nico rig over there, and you watch the Nico rig start falling on the screen, and then this mark on the graph starts rising up, and they meet. And I've seen this many times using the Lowrance active target, and they meet together. And so you're sitting there trying to feel, and well, yeah, I don't feel any bite, but I'm like, well, they're great together now, so something's going on. So I just slowly start just reeling and pull the rod back a little bit, and sure enough, there's a little bit of weight there. So then I reel faster, and rod bends over really good, and the fight is on. So, but man, I was so jacked when I got that one in, and I'm thinking, all right, now I just have to do this like 3 more times, and I'm set. But just didn't get around enough fish. I was fishing. Everything I fished was within 8 miles of takeoff. A lot of guys were finding the need to go 60, 70 miles up the river towards Lake Ontario. We were not allowed to fish in Lake Ontario. But I still don't think that's necessary. I still think there's enough 4-pounders within 8 miles of the Messina intake boat launch where we launched out of. There's enough of them to make cuts. And I still believe that. I still believe that. I just don't think I was really dialed into the fish very well. That's the problem. It wasn't that the fish weren't there. It was the fact that I was not truly dialed into it like I needed to. It seemed like when I fished deep down there on that end of the river, it seemed like all I'd ever catch were little ones. And then when I'd go up shallow, I'd fish forever without anything. And then I might get a single big one here, single big one there. Except my one best area, there seemed to be a few more in that area, but not enough. I mean, just not enough. And you'd have to, you'd catch like a 2-pounder, throw him in a live well, knowing that you better not be bringing him in at the end of the day if you want to make any cuts. And then you might catch a 2 3/4 pounder, and again, you're like, man, this ain't cutting it. And then you catch a 3.5, and you're like, okay, this one's okay, as long as I have a 4.5 pounder to offset the 3.5 pounder. So, and the whole time, just not enough is happening. I didn't have enough. I didn't really have enough good shallow spots, I guess. I think I think a guy could have done it. I mean, the fish are there. They have to be there. How can they not be within 8 miles of Messina intake? Then you get the extra time. Some of these guys are burning 1 hour one way to get to their fish. So that means they're burning 1 hour one way, but 1 hour back. That means I got 2 hours of fishing, I got to run around too. So, but still, I've got like at least an extra hour and a half of fishing time over those guys, and just could not get it done. So anyways, a jerkbait was another good thing for those shallow fish. That's what I used to find them, to try to find areas. A lot of these fish would show themselves behind the jerkbait, or they might bite it. But if they didn't bite it, they'd at least show themselves. Then you can quick put down the jerkbait. And I mean quick. You got to put that thing down, and you got to have your Dropshot or your Nico rig. You got to have it all laid out really nice, not tangled, so you can quick pick that up and throw it to whatever direction that fish is moving. And that's really important. I was talking to one of the other anglers in the bag line at weigh-in, and him and I were like in total agreement. It's like, yeah, you really have to have your backup rod for these followers. You got to make sure you have it laid out. It's not tangled. You take the time to set it down, make sure it's not tangled into anything else. So when you see a fish, you drop your jerkbait rod or your topwater rod or chatterbait rod, whatever it is, and you know right where to go to grab that other one, because you have to take your eyes off of that fish for about 2 seconds. So, and that's if the rod is in perfect position. If you got to untangle it and stuff, and you take your eyes off of that fish for 10 seconds, and then you try to relocate them with your eyes, and with a little bit of ripple, maybe a little bit of cloud cover, and it's 8 or 9 feet deep, it's you're going to lose sight of a lot of those fish if you take too much time trying to untangle out, your backup rod. So, anyways, tomorrow. So that's enough of that. They got their championship round tomorrow. It's just, I can't believe I'm like 2 days drive away from there, and that tournament's still going on that I was in. It's frustrating, man. Just my whole history of my whole championship history with FLW and now the MLF Pro Circuit. My whole championship history is just checkered with just mediocre to poor finishes. It's just frustrating, and I'm tired of that. And when another championship comes and goes with the same stupid results, it's just deflating and frustrating and aggravating. But there's nothing I can do about it now, other than see these fishing. Okay, I got a tournament. Today is the day that I'm doing this video is a Saturday. I've got a tournament this coming Thursday with the Champions Tour on Gull Lake, which is a 1 hour drive from right where I'm sitting. And well, when I'm this aggravated and frustrated, that just sets the fire under me to take it out on the next tournament. So hopefully, these Gull Lake fish they got a kind of an ornery, upset professional fisherman coming their way to take it out on them with no mercy on these fish, no mercy on my competitors next Thursday. I could be eating these words, but it's going to go down Thursday. I don't care. It's just going to happen. So, but fishermen have been known to eat their words before, so including myself. Because sometimes you say the wrong, if you say the word guarantee, that's the guarantee that you're not going to catch diddly squat. I'll tell you that right now. So anyhow, that's about all I really should say for now. Going to practice on Gull Lake tomorrow, and I'll be actually staying there through until the tournament, because I could stay here, but I got a campground right on the lake there, campsite, and I'd actually burn more gas in my truck driving back and forth from here than just staying at that campsite. And then plus I got 2 more extra hours of the day by staying down there, so I like that feature. So that's about it from Moyna Bass Fishes. Over.